Welcome to a new episode of The Wealth Movement, where we delve into the intertwined realm of financial planning and personal well being. Today, I have the privilege of hosting Danielle Miura, a financial planner with a poignant personal journey in family caregiving. Danielle shares her insights on the often overlooked challenges of caregiving, emphasizing the emotional and financial toll it imposes. Our conversation covers a broad spectrum from the necessity for early intervention to preventing caregiver burnout, to the importance of discussing non financial matters such as end of life planning. Join us as we explore the crucial role of support systems, the unexpected nature of becoming a caregiver, and the invaluable resources available for those navigating these demanding paths. Danielle's perspective is not only enlightening for financial planners, but it also gives anyone facing or likely to face caregiving responsibilities. Let's dive into this vital discussion that promises to enrich our understanding and approach to caregiving in today's society. Hey, Danielle. So, thank you so much for being on the Wealth Movement podcast. I'm so grateful that you're here with me today.
Yeah, I'm thankful to be here with you. We first met when we were on a plane together,
Yeah,
and now we're on your podcast. It's
I,
amazing how things can happen, one day and a different day another. So I'm happy to be here.
exactly. Obviously, it just, like you said, we met on the plane going to Shift conference last year, and turns out, we do the same thing. For different folks, of course. So yeah, it's just a matter of time, I think, just before we connected again and collaborated. So like I said, I'm very grateful, very excited, really, to have this conversation with you. Obviously, you're a financial planner like myself, and I think we are in a world where there's just a lot of people that really need our help, and there's not enough of us, I think. And so I love collaborating with other advisors, other planners, that I get to meet because again, there's always something to be learned from one another. So that's why I'm really excited for this conversation with you. And so before we get into the conversation, I always like to start these podcasts off with a little bit of a, icebreaker, a little bit of warm up to get the conversation flowing. So for you, I was thinking about, what can I ask Danielle that I think is going to be very impactful. And this is one that I like. You're a woman, obviously, in our profession, and I'm always excited to meet women on our profession. There's not enough of you guys, so I'm glad to see more and more joining our profession. So my question for you is, if you could have your Last Supper style type of dinner, and you were able to have dinner with three women, maybe that you admire, living, dead, not direct family members. I'm just curious, who would those be, and why?
Mm, that is so hard because I'm looking at it from multiple different angles of like family members, and then I'm thinking of people within the professional in our profession that are so inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to go with, you said three people, right?
Two or three. It's up to you.
Okay. So I'm going to say start with Kathy Balsecki because of her work with widows and
Mm.
grief really inspires me. And then I'm going to say my mom and her inspirational journey. And the last one, the toughest. Um, the last one, I'm going to say, can we bring people back to life?
Of course. Yes.
Okay. So, I'm going to say my grandmother because there's a lot of unanswered questions that I wish I would have asked her when she was alive. But now,
Mm,
as the state is processing, um, there's so many unanswered questions.
yeah, yeah. Well. Thank you for sharing that. I know that was. I believe you took care of your grandmother, right? You were a caretaker for
Hmm.
her. Yeah, yeah. So I
Yeah, I was a
guess.
sandwich generation caregiver, so I cared for. I have a younger daughter who just turned 5,
Hmm.
and I cared for my grandmother in her late 80s to early 90s.
Mm, okay. Yeah, and this is why, I really wanted to connect with you, and I think it's important because you have a very unique experience, right? One being a financial planner in helping people with money, and specifically your niche of, helping caretakers, but also you had firsthand experience. You were in the thick of it for many years, and obviously juggling your life with your business and taking care and being a mom. It's got to be a lot, obviously. And so, just tell me a little bit about just kind of, Spark Financial, when you started it, and what your mission is with Spark.
Hmm. Yeah, I was a financial coach for a while, and I became a maybe what some people would call a forced entrepreneur. Um, I moved closer to home to be closer to my family. And a month later, my grandmother fell on tile floor and she was a wheelchair user after that. During that time, my responsibilities as a caregiver continued to expand. So I wasn't able to have a W 2 position. There's not a lot of part time positions within our industry.
Yeah.
And so being able to hold a full time position while caregiving is very difficult.
Hmm.
So that's when I became an entrepreneur. I didn't think at the time that I was really a caregiver. So I didn't really associate with myself with having this caregiving specialty. I was starting to specialize in working with younger individuals and in growing their wealth and building their wealth. But then I soon realized after getting burnt out and saying, admitting that I was a family caregiver, that I was playing this role, that there's very little research on family caregiving.
Hmm.
The AARP has done some really great research on family caregiving, but usually it's like very basic things like and what family caregivers pay for their loved ones, for their health care. It's likely as a caregiver to have poor self care,
Hmm.
health issues, um, dig into debt or retirement savings or retire early. But those
Hmm.
are really the basic research that has come out. There's not really any deep qualitative research to really understand what it's like to be a caregiver. And each person is very different. We each have our different stories. What
Yeah.
you may hear today from my story may be completely different for somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I mean, like you just said, we all have very unique stories, right? There is no identical story. And, I'm curious, as far as becoming a caregiver for your grandmother, was that something that you chose, or was that, kind of asked of you? And only ask is because I feel like most caregivers, it's just kind of something that happens to them. Obviously, no one, I don't know if many people choose to be a caregiver just because of the, obviously the financial toll, like you mentioned, emotional toll, all the different things that go into caretaking.
Yeah, for many people, it's more of something you stumble upon than
Hmm.
something you wish for.
Yeah.
For me, growing up, I wish to be a police officer or a physical therapist. Serving people and helping people is kind of ingrained in my blood. But do I think that growing up that I had a family caregiver role listed as something that I wanted to do for for a decent period of my life? No. Did I think
Yeah.
at 25 that I would be positioned into a position where I had to care for a family member? No.
Yeah.
Did I love and cherish the time I had caregiving for my grandmother? Yes. I will never take that time back, but doesn't mean that everything was perfect, that the
Yeah.
caregiving journey, everything aligned and that everything went smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that was just beautifully said, just like how you were talking about, at 25, this was obviously something that you didn't imagine, and you had dreams of doing something different at a younger age. But yet, a result of that obviously gave you that special time, that bond with your grandmother that maybe you might not have had otherwise. So I think that was beautiful, just
Mm.
as you said, just to be able to see both sides of it, right? And that I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. We just don't know a lot of times what that is when we're in the
Mhm.
thick of it. So obviously, you again living as a caregiver, being a caregiver for your grandmother, but also wearing the hat, right, as a now financial planner for caregivers. Um, Obviously, you found your why. You found through that
Mhm.
experience. I'm curious. You mentioned a little bit, but I'm curious. What are some things maybe that you noticed, right, and through helping clients, some of these challenges that you just touched on that they face. You mentioned, I think, going into debt, things like that. How is that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, financially, caregivers really get a hit.
Mm,
As I said, I wouldn't. It was very difficult at that point when I started caregiving to hold a full time job. Even there are many family caregivers who, I don't want to just say that, they don't provide full time jobs. A lot have full time jobs and are navigating family caregiving and having younger children. They're my heroes, um, because I'm amazed by and admire their commitment to their family,
mm,
while working full time.
mm,
But if I were to just give you some sample research, I would tell you that family caregivers do dip in about a third dip into their savings, whether that's their retirement savings or debt.
mm,
So a lot of family caregivers need to know, where can I withdraw money for safety and security? Because as you know, a lot of times dipping into savings means accumulating taxes,
mm,
and a lot of people don't aren't aware of the tax implications of dipping into your 401k or IRA in order to pay for either their expenses or their loved ones.
mm.
A lot of people go into early retirement. The average age for family caregivers is around 50. So a
Wow.
lot of people will just quit their job early and go into early retirement, but that may affect them later into their retirement because they're not able to save as much as they normally would if they were to retire at the age that they wanted.
Mm,
Nor do they have, even though a lot of people hate their jobs, or dislike their jobs, there is a big social aspect of working and being proactive. And sometimes when people leave their jobs, they're not able to receive that social time that they normally would, um, like not being working. So
that's what
that's
you're
a
saying.
struggle for many people, is how can they get that social outlet? How can they get the self-care that they need while not working? And then savings, many do not are not able to save. Saving to them may be paying for long-term care for their loved one. We
Hmm.
can't just expect that everybody's on government aid, that Medicare takes care of everything, because it doesn't,
Right.
and that everybody's on government assistance to pay for long-term care. Um, we There's a lot paid out of pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's important, really, to highlight, right? Because, for one, as you mentioned, a lot of times caregivers just, again, it's just, it falls in your lap, right? And a lot of times, maybe even without warning, right? I'm sure that has happened majority of the time. And so, just thinking about what we do, right, as financial planners and helping people plan for the future, caregiving is something that I don't think you plan for. Um, and I'm just looking at it. I'm sure you can probably agree that most caregivers are women.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I
And I
work
think
with.
we'll see that shift as we're doing more research for male caregivers. I
Yeah.
feel like we'll probably see more male caregivers come out and be reflective of their journeys. But of the male caregivers that I know, there's very slim compared to the women who feel comfortable spreading awareness.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, just kind of continuing that. So, how, is there even a way that you think that people can prepare, honestly, to be a caregiver?
Yeah. So the good thing about talking about caregiving is that I'm able to prepare all my clients for caregiving and what that looks like.
Hmm.
I may not be able to fully prepare them because no one can be fully prepared, just
Yeah.
like no one can be fully prepared to be disabled for the rest of their life. You can kind of, it's our job to plan for these unexpected events. So if we're able to plant seeds to at least say, hey, this is how you can prepare, this is what it looks like, these are my experiences, these are, X, Y, and Z that you can do. And we can talk about some of those ways to prepare. One would be getting a self-care routine.
Mm,
Like, you can do that without preparing to be a family caregiver. That's just a financial health
hmm.
thing that's good for you to repair. Make sure you're going to your annual doctor's appointments, making sure that you have an exercise routine, even if that's like a walk around, for a mile, walk around your neighborhood, getting yourself into a routine that takes care of yourself. What I found is a lot of the personality types of family caregivers are usually ones to put themselves less behind others. So they're putting their loved ones before themselves.
Mm,
And when you're so used to that type of mentality, you often aren't preparing this self care routine for yourself.
mm. That makes sense. Yeah, because that's ingrained in the way they think, right? Putting others before themselves. So the thought of self-care routine is, like you mentioned, way behind their priorities. But it makes a lot of sense as far as why that could be something to really think about, to, like you said, to help them in the long run, because it is, like you said, emotionally draining for one, right? Now, what about as far as, other things that maybe they could do to
Mhm.
prepare themselves?
So, another thing that's not necessarily basic to family caregivers, but helps prepare for family giving is setting financial boundaries.
Hmm.
So, if a family member is asking for money, whether that's your child or your parent, how much are you willing to give up to help them?
Yeah.
And what is your boundaries as far as time as well? Um, I think when we give so much of ourselves, we don't place boundaries ahead of time. So we don't know what that looks like. And things with long term care can just add up so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, many people think, oh, it's just this flat fee we pay and that's it.
Yeah.
But I was like buying things on Amazon, like gloves and wipes and other small things that can just really add up quickly, that most people don't realize that are involved in long term care.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, again, it's all the small little things, right? That end up that you don't think about, right? Kind of, we always kind of think about the bigger things, but we don't really think about those small things that really, really add up pretty fast. So I think that's very interesting that you pointed out, is being able to have boundaries. I mean, I think that's so important because, again, especially, they are the giving type, right? And
Mhm.
it's in their innate nature to just want to give, but at the same time, that could be dangerous and they could be taken advantage of. I'm sure you've seen through that.
Yeah, it's like how much can you really give up yourself? If you're already giving your time and you're giving your money, what else are you giving up? And people think that boundaries are just a basic thing that everybody has and a skill that everybody has, but that's not necessarily true.
Hmm.
Many people suffer and have trouble with setting boundaries.
Yeah. Wait. Now, as far as caretakers, obviously, anyone, right, can, again, no one chooses to be a caretaker, right? But there are professional caretakers, right? I mean, versus, say, family
Mhm.
caretakers. Um, as far as who you work with, do you primarily work with, like, the family caretaker, like a family member that is taking care of another family member, or are you also working with, say, a professional caretaker?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide services to both individuals. But it just most commonly, I serve those who are taking care of a family member, taking care of a friend.
Yeah.
I think when we associate family caregiving, we're thinking about that it's a family member helping another family member. But when people are needing, there's always someone who usually steps up,
Hmm.
and that could be a neighbor or a friend could fill that role as well.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious on that note, like, obviously it's a very tough role and it's usually all the responsibilities on that one person, right? I mean, what about the remaining family members? Are there things that obviously there's a lot of things they can do, right? But are there specific things that they could really, do to help out that caregiver? Because again, that caregiver is taking on all the responsibility.
Yeah, that's usually the way it lies, unfortunately. Where even if you have like five siblings, it usually the one who's closest ends up
Hmm.
filling the majority of the role.
Hmm.
And if I were those siblings and there was one sibling who was doing all the role, I would try to set up a meeting and say, how can we divvy up some of these tasks? Even if I can't be there physically, can we pay for that sibling who's taking over all the doing the primary caregiving? Can we buy them a gift card to go out to eat? Can we do some like give them a gift card for a massage or something so they can have self care?
Yeah.
There's only a couple families that I've seen that really collaborate and work together, but if at least you can throw in, something nice to show that, like, I'm really thankful you're taking care of our parent. How can we support you in the journey? That would go a long way to make a family caregiver feel that they're supported by others, or just a simple call. I'm just checking up on you. I know that you've been helping and supporting our parents, and they really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That would go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure again, on your journey, like you said, it wasn't difficult, but I'm sure you had a lot of support on that end.
Yes and no.
Not to throw anyone under the bus. Well,
um, yeah, it just, as I said before, many of the stories I've heard, we would always like family members to get along, but that necessarily is the case.
yeah.
Usually, it's the person who's closest to that family member is usually the one who fulfills primarily most of the role,
Okay.
and um, sometimes not the case, but usually I would say majority of the time. Usually there's never, just like if you're working on a team, there's someone who's more of the leader who takes majority of the role, and then there's some followers, just like normally working with the team. And
Hmm.
there's always one person that sometimes does majority of the tasks, and there's people that just kind of sitting around and kind of wait for tasks to be completed.
Yeah.
And however you fit in that team is how you want your caregiving to look like, but usually it's not a well balanced team unless
Mm.
you're in a perfect environment.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, because, yeah, all the responsibility is on one person. And yeah, yeah, I understand. So, you've been helping family caregivers now for 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, what do you, envision, 5 years down the road? What do you hope for, this group that you're helping out, hope to see, in the future for them?
Yeah. These last couple of years have been a really big shift.
Yeah.
Um, with like as I'm looking as a political view of um, like the awareness caregivers have gotten, and which has been great. Um, but awareness is only so much.
Hmm.
We need to see some of type of actionable steps taken by the government to really support us. We're providing over there was a study done like over $20 billion worth of care for unpaid caregivers.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that there should be some like type of check delivered to those people, because at the end of the day, we decided to fulfill this unpaid position.
Right.
Um, but I think there should be more support in place at a local or national level to support caregivers. Like, for example, caregiving.com is partnering with Walmart,
Okay.
so that when you go to the Walmart pharmacy, there's educational tools to help family caregivers.
Mm,
Um, when you go to the doctor's office with your loved one, there should be some questionnaires in place to ask caregivers questions. How are you doing? Can we make an appointment for the both of you? Like, if it's a general practitioner or a family doctor, can we, do your checkup with your loved one's checkup and do it at
mm,
the same time or
yeah.
similar times? Um, we're seeing people that are on the front end that can support, but there's not trainings in place. There's not support in place to do this.
Mm,
And you can see caregivers everywhere, whether
yeah.
you open your eyes or close your eyes, they're everywhere around you. And if you can do like one simple thing and ask someone, how you're doing, um, how can we support you, and say how you can support them. Don't just say, just like we sometimes say in like the widow or widower community, like, don't just say like, how can I help? Say, how can I help with some tasks that you can do? Can I
Yeah.
go get you groceries? Can I um, call these associations to ask what resources they have? Because people don't know what you can help them with and what you can
Mm,
provide.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, I think that's so important. So, you mentioned caregiving.org.
Hmm.
Is that,
So there's a lot of
yeah, I'm curious. What is that? Is that just like resources for caregivers to be able to go to? And again, obviously, no one goes to school to be a caregiver, right? So when that responsibility is thrust upon you, I'm sure it's like, what do I do? You know?
Yeah, there's a lot of great nonprofits that are out there, as well as individuals who are former family caregivers and trying to give
Okay.
back. Similar to what I'm doing, I'm trying to give back to the community
Yeah.
and raising awareness about how to appropriately talk about these subjects with clients and prepare them for family caregiving. Um, but what I would find, if you're thinking that you may fall into a caregiving role, whether that you're the daughter who lives closest to that loved one, usually those who are child free, childless, usually end up being family caregivers. Um, Based on of culture, usually minorities are
Hmm.
more likely to be caregivers. Um, and then the LGBTQ plus community usually are statistically family caregivers or become caregivers. So if you feel that you're falling into that, into those categories,
Yeah.
you may say to yourself, how can I go to a family caregiver support group? You don't have to be there to ask for advice. Just listen
Yeah.
to what caregivers are going through and some of their experiences.
Mm.
And you can pull tips of advice from those support groups, so that even if you don't, you still get like some great observation tips. But if you do, at least you have a basic foundation, not like me, where I became a family caregiver and then I was like, now what? Like, only
Right.
financial planning only like goes so far. It's not like CFPs were trained on what family caregiving looks like.
Right.
A lot of our curriculum only covered how to pay for care, nothing in between.
Right.
So I had to learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't doubt that. I'm sure. Yeah. You learned a lot on the fly because again, there is no technical skill that you learn, like you said, during getting the CFP designation or just being a planner, right? As far as those technical skills, a lot of it is the human skill and just the things that you had to learn on your own. Like you said, self care, I think, is obviously so important that it can easily go by the wayside and get neglected very, very fast.
Mhm.
And it kind of reminds me of how we go on the the airplane, right? And they do the little safety thing, and they're like, "All right, should the air mask drop, make sure you put yours on first before you put your, it on the kid." It's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, you got to be able to take care of yourself if you're gonna also take care of this person that you love, or to be able to take care of them. I think that's so important that we miss that out a lot.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest saying that to caregivers. Like, put your mask on before somebody else, because many caregivers will just be like, roll their eyes for a second in their mind and be like, "Yes, I know, um, but are you willing to help me create those steps?
Yeah,
Um, like, are you going to find some solutions for me? Because right now, especially when you're in the thick of caregiving,
yeah,
you don't know what those steps look like.
yeah,
Like Googling a nonprofit is hard because everything seems so blurry.
yeah.
And that's usually when people need help, is once they figure out that they're burnt out, and usually that's too late to really get help. Like,
Mm,
I was trying to get help when I was starting to burn out. I'll just give you an example. I was looking for a therapist. I've gone to therapy before, so it was a natural idea for me to go to therapy. But it's not like you're going to magically have a therapist writing the tips of your fingers.
right.
You have to call your insurance company to see what's covered, who can be covered for you. Contact those therapists, and sometimes they won't even respond back to you to set up an
Mm,
appointment. And then when you actually get to the meetings, you may not even find that the therapist really clicks with you, that you're compatible, because you don't want to just choose anybody to be your therapist.
absolutely.
And then once you've interviewed 4 or 5 people, which that's not like covered by insurance, so you're paying out of pocket to interview multiple people, then you're wanting to your insurance company, what do I need to pay for at whatever $200 an hour, and what is going to be covered by you? So there's a financial issue as well to that of, do I just pick the first therapist even though we're not compatible? Or do I try to interview people but know that I may have to pay out of pocket for some of these therapy costs because I'm interviewing multiple people?
Mm, I see. That makes a lot of sense.
So
Yeah.
that by the time I actually got help with the therapist that I really connected with, it was like 3 months after.
Oh, wow. After already feeling like burnt out and just,
Yeah.
wow,
So
wow.
that may be for many people where it's like they're finally trying to get support. They're finally going to the doctors. They're finally realizing there's a problem. But it's like, oh, wait, you can't get it right now.
Mm,
And even when you go to one therapy session, it's not like just magically
right.
things seem to
Exactly.
fall into place, like all your problems seem to disappear. So things happen very gradually. So if we can try to support people ahead of time, before they're burnt out, that would be the ideal scenario, but usually doesn't happen.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Would you say that probably would be, I mean, if it can be done right, probably one of the most effective ways is to support early, um, to try and help prevent, or not prevent, but minimize maybe some of that burnout.
Yeah, like the two things advisors can do is check in with your clients. If you feel like you haven't heard them for in a while,
Mm-hmm.
check in on them and see how they're doing. Maybe they're just started family caregiving. It's all new to them, but they may not feel that your trusting relationship is appropriate to talk about family caregiving.
Yeah.
If we can create that open, honest place with our clients that they feel comfortable talking about these topics when they happen, the better they are to, better we are to support them and what their needs are.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I
This,
couldn't agree more with that. Just that, again, I think people sometimes are maybe afraid, right, to even reach out to maybe their advisor because they maybe think we're too busy or whatnot. But I think just, when we went to Shift, I think we agreed that that was a great conference because it really talked about the human element of being an advisor, right, and how to
mhm.
connect even deeper with your clientele, and being able to be more on the vulnerable end, and just reaching out and saying, hey, is there anything else besides money, right, that's on the top of your mind that you like to discuss. I mean, just even that, maybe they don't even say or mention it, but just the mere fact of being able to ask that and be mindful of that, I think is important, like you said.
Mhm. The other thing I was thinking about is having a list of resources for therapy. Have a template that you use to recommend people
Mm,
for therapy. And kind of do that like monologue with yourself of, what would I say to someone if I felt like they were showing symptoms of burnout or they were showing symptoms of, needing extra support? How can I connect them with, either nonprofits in their community, um, direct them maybe to their religious community that they know of? Because therapy doesn't just have to be therapists. It could
yeah.
be, a mentor, it could be a coach, it could be a religious leader. So having those support resources in place already, so you can just be like, based on your area, you may want to contact these people,
Mm,
or I will link you an email to this person I know that may be able to support you.
yeah. Yeah. No, obviously that would be something where I'm assuming where they open up to you about it, right? Not just like, hey, I noticed these things. I think you should go see these people.
Yeah, hopefully it's a nice handoff, not a
Yeah.
you seem to have a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
I
refer
don't
you
think that would
out.
be appropriate. I don't think that would be good. Yeah. No, but I think it's definitely important and worth noting, like you said, just really having those other resources, whether you're an advisor or just a family member, maybe not the caregiver, but just, you kind of see things happening within the family. Like you said, just being there to support them in preparation to help, minimize the stress of that very stressful role. Um, Goes a long way. And I think it's, like you said, it's important to know that there are resources, but at this point, it sounds like there's not enough, right, for caregivers out there.
Yeah, I'm happy to give you I have a blog of different resources. I'm happy to give that to you so you can put that in the show notes
Yeah, that would be
so it's
amazing.
available for people. Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you, Danielle, also you're doing a little bit of research on the side as well, too, deeper into this subject matter, I'm sure.
Yeah, at heart, I'm a researcher. I'm a complete nerd, but I'm okay with that. I'm accepting of that.
Awesome.
Um, and I've been providing resources on the side for financial planners to get these types of education with a mix of research that's out there. I'm not saying that it's perfect research. We still got a long ways to go, as I said before. Um, but if I can provide some tips and some awareness on some of these topics, I feel that not only will I be able to serve my current clients, but serve the clients that other financial planners are working with, and to support them in serving those clients.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's really honestly the purpose behind the Wealth Movement podcast and connecting with folks like yourself who are in the business as well, and just that that not idea, but just to give, right? There's, like in said, there's so many people that need our help, and so many different types of people that need our help, and to be able to just give without expecting anything in return, you end up getting a lot in return because you're giving so much valuable information. So I appreciate, the time and effort and the research that you're putting in. It's definitely things that I want to, make sure I'm taking a look at and aware of, because I know it's going to help in my client conversations as well. So keep
Thank
doing
you.
the research. I I know it's not hard. I did it wasn't a research paper, but I do help widows, and I did like a white paper. And it's just when you start to go deep into the research, you realize just how much information maybe that a lot of people are not aware of. So just being able
Mhm.
to bring that to light is so powerful, I think.
Yeah, I think when we think of family caregiving, what is the first idea that you have that comes on the top of your head? When you
Uh,
envision what family caregiving looks like, what is your first vision?
I just envision it to be really hard. you know? Yeah, I mean, it's just something that's thrown on you. Again, helping with a lot of widows, in my experience over the years, I've noticed that they've been caregivers sometimes twice, right? Caregivers for their spouse or husband, and then sometimes they're even caregivers for their aging parents, and sometimes even for their children. So, uh, yeah, it just it's it's hard to, I'm sure, on so many levels that I don't understand. So I think it's important to, I think, connect with you because you've gone through it.
Why I asked you is because many people, when they associate with family caregiving, they associate with just taking care of a parent, doing elder care.
Yeah.
For you, it seems like you associate it with elder care and spousal caregiving.
Hmm.
But caregiving is a huge umbrella. And I wouldn't say I'm an expert in all forms of caregiving. But those are two of like the 10 types of family
Oh,
caregivers.
wow.
So,
Can you
yeah.
expand on that?
Yeah, so it can really go and expand into a lot of detail. So you have long distance caregivers.
Okay.
Um, don't quote me on all 10. I'll try to think of them all on the top of my head.
Sure, sure.
Cross border caregiving. So those who their loved ones live in a different country than they do.
Mm,
Um, then you'll have to give perspective. Long distance caregiving is usually like more than an hour away from their loved ones.
okay.
Um, then you have, as you said, spousal caregiving, taking care of an aging parent. You have special needs
Hmm.
children. So that could be caring for an adult child. Um, what's the other ones on the top of my head? If I think of the other four, I'll let you know.
Sure.
But yeah, like it can be truly like expanded. It could be like a child in NICU, just being a
Mm,
parent
yeah.
is caregiving. Um, so a lot of people don't think of it as such of a broad spectrum
Yeah.
of needs. The basic definition of caregiving is protecting and caring for a vulnerable person.
Mm,
And a vulnerable person can be very different and can be a large spectrum.
yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for bringing that to light and bringing that to attention. Like I said, like you pointed out, I thought of caregiving in different, ways, but I didn't realize you're right. I mean, there is such a broader spectrum when it comes to this concept, right, of caregiving. It's not as simple as one may think, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what's so hard about it. Hmm.
yeah. Now that makes a lot of sense. Total sense. So with all obviously with all these different types of ways in which one can be a caregiver, I mean, are there? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, are there things that, we already touched on, things that family members can do, support system, things that maybe the caregiver themselves can do. Obviously, there's a lot of planners that watch the show. Are there things that maybe planners can be aware of beyond what you already touched on that you think could be helpful?
Hmm. Yeah. If we can facilitate relationships and conversations with multiple generations,
Hmm.
for example, let's say a parent is your client and their child is going to be their power of attorney. If you can establish that relationship ahead of time, so at least they know who you are, even if they're 18 years old, like at least they know when my
Exactly.
parent dies or my parent needs caregiving, I know who to go to right away. I have their phone number.
Yeah.
At least there's a pre established relationship. And then being able to have those conversations, those sticky conversations that many people don't like to talk about
Hmm.
with those people. You can be the facilitator and the third party managing some of these conversations that many people don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want your funeral to be like? If so, you probably should let someone know.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
what? what are your wishes for long-term care and caregiving? And you can even go into more detail of like, do you want a feeding tube? Do you not want a feeding tube? Do
Mm,
you want a catheter? Or do you not want a catheter? These are things caregivers make so many decisions, a lot of medical decisions, and they just kind of go with the guidance of what the doctor feels is best. But it's like comes to a point where it's like, do I listen to what the doctor thinks is best? Or do I do what the wishes of my loved one is? And
mm,
do I know what those wishes are?
yeah.
And as a person, you don't want to be in an uncomfortable position that you wouldn't want to be in. But if someone's making the decision for you, you may not have that choice.
Yeah.
So displaying those wishes ahead for someone, um, if you're the financial advisor, help connect them. Do they have a trusted contact person? Do they have an in case I die file? So if they die or they're in the hospital for a while, do they have someone that can easily pay their bills for them?
Yeah.
Are there bills on automatic payments? There's a lot of really simple things that we can do that make a large difference.
Yeah.
It can be the difference between I'm paying a loved one's bill through check versus I'm paying someone's bill through automatic payments.
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely the little things, like you mentioned earlier, do certainly add up. And yeah, I think it's just having those difficult conversations. Everyone, right? Just no one likes to think about those things, right? It's very unpleasant, but it's in the reality is it's gonna happen one day. And I think, like you said, and as planners, right, it's the more we can be prepared. We'll never be 100% prepared, right? But I think preparedness and awareness, and again, like you said, just having a little bit more knowledge, not blind to the fact that this can't happen to me, could very well, and just acknowledging that, I think, is the first important step, right? To hopefully have a much more pleasant experience as much as possible, if there's even such a thing.
Yeah, we don't want to be numb to the fact that we are just going to be one of those people who die seconds away from our
Yeah,
spouses,
yeah,
or that we just quickly die and we never need long-term care.
yeah,
If we can be more cognizant and be more of a devil's advocate, then worst comes to worst, the money just is given to their beneficiary.
right,
If we can plan that ahead of time, I guess everybody would probably want to die with zero money and just maximize their life. But
right. In an
many,
ideal
many
world.
people want to do that. Um, but if we can prepare ahead of time, to make sure that there's a smoother transition, then I think it's very worthwhile. It's going to take more time for financial advisors to take these steps, but then you'll have less time and less uncertainty later
Absolutely.
when you have that family member asking you, to open an account or close an account, or asking questions about what they wanted their finances to look like or what they wanted their funeral to look like. When my grandmother died, she told us that she wanted to die in this specific dress. It was like her honeymoon dress.
Mm,
And she always talked about it, but she never told us where it was. A week before she passed away, she told me, these are my wishes for when I die. Like this is, I want to be she specifically said, I want to be taken off life support as quickly as possible and just freeze me until my family is all together for my funeral.
mm,
And she just quickly said, like, that's what she wanted.
yeah,
And then she said, don't worry, because your uncles and mother know exactly what I want for my funeral, and you won't have to do anything.
yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting in her closet, hoping that she comes and tells me where this dress is that she wants to die in.
Mm.
You don't want family members to be like put in an awkward position in your closet, wondering where this dress could be,
Right.
or where your funeral outfit is, or where an account is, or where your safe is that they need to open.
Yeah. 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 I totally agree. I think that is just so important that a lot of people just don't think about, right? I mean, they just You just think, oh yeah, I'll get to it someday, and sure enough, someday ends up happening today without even knowing. So full advocate on just, yeah, kind of having those tough conversations with family members, children, whoever you're, whoever it may be, because I'm fully, believe if you're prepared, then that just gives you more time to just go out and enjoy life, because you've had those things taken care of. But I feel like most people are, let me enjoy life now and worry about those things later on. But
Who
oftentimes
cares? I'm gonna
it's,
die anyways. I don't
oh
have to worry
yeah,
about it when I die.
oh gosh, how many times have you heard
It'll be a
that?
it'll be a quick death.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm not gonna
We
live
wanna hear
that long.
instead of those phrases for all those, people listening that they're not financial planners, we wanna hear instead, "We're ready to die." That is like the best compliment, the weirdest but best compliment that we could receive
Mm,
is, "I am ready to die," because that means that we did our job to make sure that you're as comfortable as possible
mm,
when you pass away.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, that would be very tough for me to hear, from a client, but I get it.
It
It makes sense,
Yeah.
because,
It's not like those clients are telling me that, like, they're, like, ready to end their life.
right.
It's more of like, "We feel comfortable in the way you've prepared me. We feel comfortable that if we die, we're not a burden to somebody else."
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And that doesn't mean, right, like you said, they're gonna die, but they, at least those things that maybe were always lingering in the back of my mind, they know that it's now taken care of. And like you said, they can
Mhm,
go peacefully whenever that is. But in the meantime, just enjoy life. Right. And then keep making adjustments along the way. Obviously, as we know, that life will keep changing. But I think that is the way you put it is very straight to the point, and it makes a whole lot of sense.
I've told a couple people that, and they're like, "What?"
Yeah, I had to take a second and be like, wait. But as you explained it more, I was like, okay, totally, totally get it.
Hopefully someone, like, listens to the sentence after. They just don't, like, pause the podcast right after I say that.
Yeah, they're like, oh, what is she talking about? No, well, I got this calendar behind me. I don't know if you can see it, but
Mhm,
it's a, I don't know if you would call it, yeah, it's like a life calendar.
mhm,
And it's very stoic in the way it was designed, because it has a saying, memento mori, and it means that you must remember, you must die. Right. And it's just obviously accepting the fact that our life here on earth is limited, but we have enough time to live a great life. But also, we can't dismiss the fact that someday we're going to die. And so it just brings to bear and brings to awareness, when you realize that fact, then you'll do the things that are necessary to not just take care of yourself, but take care of your loved ones. And just like you said, having these tough conversations now rather than later are so important, not just for you, but your loved ones.
mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, if we could just be accepting of the fact that we'll all die eventually, we just don't choose when. Many people don't choose when they're going to die.
yeah,
So
yeah. In our financial plans, we put them to 90 to 100. As we wrap up, Danielle, is there anything else that you think maybe we didn't discuss, or maybe talk about, that you would find to be very helpful for those, again, that are finding themselves in the caregiving role or going into that role?
I would say, as a final thought, of you're not alone.
Mm,
Um, there are people in places that will give you support. I'm on social media, if you're feeling that you're trapped in a caregiving situation or you're burning out, feel free to hit my DMs. My DMs are always open. And maybe I can uh, either help you or put you in the right direction to seek support, because it's not easy and we're all in this together. there's a lot of us, and many people don't even say that they're a family caregiver, or um, won't won't associate themselves as a family caregiver due to um, the burden that they may hold. That word, that word that may hold for people.
Mm,
You don't want your work knowing that you're a family caregiver, because statistically, you're less likely to get promoted. You're more likely to
mm,
miss um, work hours due to caregiving. It's not like that word caregiving that just gets floated around, and that it's a positive term for everybody.
mm-hmm,
And if you're someone who's like, I fit within this role, I don't know where I'm at, and I don't know how to seek help, please um, get support, whether that's a support group, um, talk to your religious leader, religious community. Um, get There's people I know that I never thought were family caregivers, and then they'll feel comfortable telling me that they're a family caregiver, and we've created groups together to support each other. It's a team effort, it's a community effort. Just like you say with a child,
yeah.
you say like you need a village to raise a child, you need a village to caregive,
Mm,
and let me be part of that village if you're willing.
yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And I'll definitely, grab all of that information, for people and put it in the show notes. But just, for those that don't look at show notes, could you just kind of share, the best places for people to connect with you? Is that LinkedIn, Instagram, and all the details?
Yeah, I spend most of my time on LinkedIn and Twitter, either under my name, Danielle Miura, Miura. Um, and then for Twitter, it's Miula,
Okay.
because Twitter wouldn't let me do the RA at the end. So, but I'm there.
Awesome. 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 Well, Danielle, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast and really sharing your story, and sharing your journey, and just again a lot of valuable information and insight and awareness that I think we need to be more aware of. So I definitely look forward to having people listen to this episode, and hopefully those that feel again that they're alone, just knowing that they're not alone as a caregiver is so important, that there are resources, people like you, who they can connect with. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for spreading awareness about family caregiving and willing to have this vulnerable conversation.
Of course. Thank you, Danielle. Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Private Wealth Services, LLC. An affiliate of Kestra is Devote Wealth Management, and Kestra Investment Services are not affiliated. Kestra is and Kestra do not provide tax or legal advice. The opinions expressed in this commentary are those of the author and may not necessarily reflect those held by Kestra Investment Services, LLC, or Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. This is for general information only and is not intended to provide specific investment advice or recommendations for any individual. It is suggested that you consult your financial professional, attorney, or tax advisor with regard to your individual situation. Comments concerning the past performance are not intended to be forward-looking and should not be viewed as an indication of future results.